Hello Khalid, how are you?
I'm good, Wasio. How are you?
Okay, tell us what's your plan for the book, which is supposed to be out, I think, with the next couple of weeks.
Yep, next couple of weeks.
And tell us about the book and when and where it will be available.
All right. The new book is Scorched Earth. We're hoping to have it out by the end of this month. Scorched Earth is the second book in the Agency Rules series. We'll pick up from where we left off in the end of the 90s. I believe the last thing that we had happen was that, and this is a spoiler, that the ISI had caught a CIA operative inside of the Mujahideen. And that's where we ended the book last time. What you're going to see happen now is we're going to have the lead up to martial law in Pakistan. And in this book, you're going to see us go from, in the first book it was Karachi and KPK. This time you'll have Karachi, KPK, and Punjab. We may see a little bit in Kashmir, but not very much because I'm holding that one off to the next book because I want to give that a full story in its own right. What we're doing now is we're going to start talking about the jihadi groups, the expansion of what the Mujahideen became, where the influences came from, the effect on the armed forces itself, and the effect on Pakistan, as well as what happened with the war on terror in 9/11. As far as where's the book going to be available, it'll be available everywhere it is right now. It's throughout a number of bookstores in Islamabad and Lahore and Karachi. It'll be available widespread at Liberty. I think we're going to do the launch event with Liberty this time, so it'll be a much bigger event where we'll get to talk deeper into what happens with the storyline. There's a couple things that I really want to highlight for people. In the last book, we talked a lot about what the Mujahideen structure was and how they operated and what their networks were like. This time, we're going to start talking about what suicide bombers do and how they've changed the face of war. And you'll get 3 people in the book that are part of that brigade that will show you the mentality that goes into training someone, recruiting someone, and then using someone as a suicide bomber. Kamal is going to have to interact with it, and you'll see his character change a great deal from what we saw in the first book, because in the first book what you saw was he was very cold as a sniper and a soldier in the first half of the book. In the second half of the book he became a very sleek spy. But you could see that throughout the whole thing he was very divided over what was happening with him. In this book, Kamal is more determined in what he wants to achieve because he's seen the Battle of War, he's seen what war is like up close. So the little bit of that gray area will start to disappear and you'll be able to understand more of what Kamal's about. But you'll get to see a side of Kamal that I probably wouldn't have shown before. But a lot of our readers have said that they'd like to see a more personal side of him, to understand more of his background with his own family connections and how that's affected him as becoming a spy. And you'll get to see a lot of that come out with this book, because one of the things that we know about intelligence operatives is that the more damaged you are, the better operative you make, because you have certain defenses built into your system as to how you deal with situations. You know how to lie very well. You know how to cover things up, and that's something that works very well for an intelligence operative. So as you see Kamal go into certain situations, you'll get an understanding of what kind of an impact his own background with his father, with his family, has had on him becoming who he is today. So we're really looking forward to this one. It's gotten really good response from the beta readers that we've given it to, and we're expecting this one to be just as big, if not bigger, than the first book was. Okay.
Part of your first question, you said about operative caught in Pakistan of the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
So, is the operative different from asset, or is there any difference of the work they do in Pakistan?
Well, you have to understand when you look at how the Mujahideen operates and what we now call the terrorists, because Mujahideen no longer exists. The way the terrorist networks operate is that you have an operational team that sits on top. You're basically your commanders, that are the ones that are orchestrating where recruitment happens, what kind of training they're given, who goes to bomb making, who goes to suicide bomber, who becomes a fighter, who just carries a gun. Now, understanding how a terrorist network operates, yes, they also have intelligence operatives within their own structure, but those operatives are very different. They're the ones that we call the sleeper cells, because they blend into society so well that you'd never know that they were a terrorist. I mean, they're the guy sitting next to you, and you carry on regular conversations with them. You would never think that this is what they were doing until the day it happens. So the intent of this book is to expose that network now, so that people get an understanding that it's not just the guy with the beard and the long kurta shalwar that is the guy you need to be afraid of. There are so many people that are involved in this operation, from financing all the way to carrying out the attacks, that you'd never even assume that they were part of this. So the intent of scorched earth, and scorched earth it's a military terminology where you literally burn everything that can be used against you. That's what we're doing with this book, is we're burning everything that hides that. So you'll understand how the recruitment process works, you'll understand how the brainwash process works, you'll understand where financing comes from, how the financing is brought into Pakistan and they use it to buy weapons. You'll understand how people are selected from groups of children in a madrasa or from people in a village, and they go, okay, this one's going to be a fighter, this one's a suicide bomber, this one's this, and they get branched off into different camps. And once they get branched off into a different camp, how does that training work with them? How are they broken down so that whatever they think it's used to drive them in the direction that the terrorist wants to drive them in? So the intent behind this book is to, like we did with the first book, we showed what happened after the Soviets pulled out, the Mujahideen influx back into Pakistan, the kind of effect we had here because of it. This book picks up from there and shows you how that network of Mujahideen that came back turned into the terrorists that we have today, where the funding is coming from, how the armies responded to it, how the civilians have responded to it, and how the people have responded to it. Because it's one thing that we've seen in Pakistan, that you have a lot of people that are very divided over this. Do we fight them? Do we not fight them? Who is a terrorist? Who isn't a terrorist? And no one's really sat down and explained it, because there really isn't a definition for terrorism. It's fear. And however you can create fear, you create fear. So if it's street crime or if it's bombings, it's all creating fear in some way. So what we're doing is we're breaking down the network so that you can understand through a few characters here and there how this process actually works.
And throughout the story, Kamal will be the central part of it.
Kamal will still be the central part of it, because he is the anti-hero of the story. But like in the last book, you had the Mullah Shahid, Imam Shahid, that was a lovely character that we had in there. You had the Imam, you had the commanders. You'll still have fringe characters that are there that will jump in and step out, that build the story for you. Kamal's the focus of the whole story, because again, the whole story is from his eyes and what he sees and what he understands. But you can't have a complete story without bringing in the dirty and the clean and the nice and the not so nice. So you'll still have a mix of characters, but you'll see less in the military and more in civilian life.
And speaking of that, will we see more of a human side of Kamal?
Human meaning what?
We already know from the first story that there is some interest, a love interest involved in the story.
Yeah.
So will we be exploring more of it, or it's just a...
Well, here's the thing, and this is a question a lot of people have asked me, is that why don't you give Kamal a love interest? And I struggle with this a lot, because I really would like to see Kamal settle down with somebody. When I wrote the novella for Agency of Rules way back when, he did actually get married to a girl and set up a life, and I'm not going to tell you how that ended, because it may work up into here as well. Kamal will have a love interest. Whether it's fully developed in this book or in the next book, that's a different story. But he will have a love interest, because it's a matter of stability for him. When you live the life of a spy and then come back to an empty house, it's very difficult to detach yourself from what you're doing outside. And that will start to pollute his brain, start to pollute what he does, and you'll see Kamal denigrate rather than become strengthened. So you need to give him somebody to join with when he comes back to reality. So yes, there is a love interest. Whether it stays Sara or not is a different story. We know that, again, I put that spark in there in the beginning just to show that he did have a human side. But yes, there will be a more human side to come on now. You'll see it more because the more he pulls away from being a soldier, the more you see him start to become more human. Because as a spy, you kind of have to have a human side, otherwise you can't accomplish what you want to do. But you'll also see that now he'll have someone that he bounces off of, that gives him a place in reality that he can go back to, so that he's not just buried here all the time, where he was in the first book.
All right. The first book is somewhere around the early 90s.
It starts in the early 90s and ends, I believe it was 1996, 97 is where the book ended at.
And where this one will go?
This will pick up at 98, 99, and will run all the way through 2007. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, hoping to get book 3 out during the summer as well.
Okay.
So July, August 14th is what I'm shooting for book 3, which will take you through 2007 all the way to present day Pakistan.
So book 2 is about 10 years of time frame.
Yep.
Within it.
Yep. What I'm trying to do is 10 years in each book.
Okay.
So that you get a nice picture of a decade in Pakistan, because it's very difficult to give you a snapshot of what happens in the country without giving you the full picture. So you see exactly what happens leading up to the event, what happens after, and then we pick up with the next story from there.
Okay. Speaking of that, since it's the 90s and the follow-up, all of these are connected with what happened in the 80s
Yeah.
and beyond that,
Yeah.
before that.
Yep.
So we know that it was Ziaul
Yeah.
time over there.
Yeah.
The Mujahideen
Yeah.
are a byproduct of the
Yep.
same time frame.
Yep.
So why? Okay, what are the effects of Zia's era that are still apparent on the army or the actions during the 90s and now?
Well, if you remember in the first book, we had certain generals that were mixed loyalties, that weren't on board with the army completely and going after these targets. What we saw after Zia's death, there were a lot of people that were part of the officer corps inside the army that still carried on that vision, that the Afghan policy shouldn't be touched. Afghanistan is a strategic asset. We want our depth there. We want to control the Taliban. We want to control the Haqqani group, because at any point in time we can use these people again. That, as detrimental as it was for Pakistan, and now it's being used against us, we saw that cleansing start to happen when Musharraf came into power as Chief of Army Staff. And he forcibly retired a lot of the Zia loyalists, because he understood that if we're going to eliminate the jihadi Taliban problem in Pakistan, we can't have the people that created the problem still wearing a uniform. Now, what ended up happening is a lot of those people took off their uniform and went in civilian clothing and still sided with them. That's not something we can stop in terms of unarmed forces, but it doesn't mean that it's the Pakistan Army is doing it anymore. The mentality was framed and built during Zia's time, that there's a lot of benefit in keeping these people on side and keeping them on our side. What ended up happening is, for 10 years afterwards, the army was focused on Afghanistan staying a strategic asset and India being the enemy. And that affected a lot of the civilian governments that we had here in Pakistan because of it. No matter which chief you look at during that span of time, there were certain requirements that you had to fulfill as to stay prime minister. I think those were more on Benazir than they were on Nawaz Sharif, because he was part of Zia's government, so we knew that he was a loyalist no matter what, and that he would carry on whatever Zia had started. And we're seeing it today, even with his policy on terrorism in Pakistan. With Benazir, on the other hand, she wasn't a supporter of Zia. So,
which is expected with what happened to his father. What happened to her.
Understood. And she was kept on side by the army. And whether that was positive or negative in terms of civilian government is something that, is debatable in Pakistan. But if you ask me, if the army had stepped back and said, it's a civilian government now, let them do what they want to do, I think it would have ended up being a lot better for Pakistan. And we have an intelligence service. If we wanted to maintain that Afghan strategic depth, we could have done it through the ISI and not had to have military force involved. My position has always been that if the CIA does it all the time.
They do.
What the U.S. government knows and what they don't know is based on what the CIA wants them to know. And it could be the same thing here in Pakistan as well.
So at the current position, the army is not interested in overseeing the civil institutions or jump into civil matters.
No, look, there's a couple things here. When it comes to civilian institutions, I don't think the army wants any power there, because, to be very honest, during the Darnas, Raheel Sharif had the most golden opportunity presented on a platter to overthrow the government, and he didn't do it. And Zia took advantage of the exact same situation to overthrow Bhutto. So if we compare the two in the same situation, and thankfully we were given the same situation to compare the two in, Raheel Sharif said, no, let the civilians sort out their problem, we have our own fight to handle. Which tells us that Raheel Sharif is a professional soldier. His goal is to rebuild the image of the army, and he's done a fantastic job of doing so. The intent that we see with the armed forces is that while everyone wants to say that the army controls foreign policy in Pakistan, the army gives its input, just like every other military gives input to their own governments. That, look, we don't think you should do this. What the government decides to do is their own choice. I mean, the army, if we're to believe the rumors, the army still sees India as being the biggest threat to Pakistan, our biggest enemy. Yet the government of Pakistan gave India most favored nation status. Now, if the army was controlling civilian institution, that would never have happened, right? So you actually have to look at the reality on ground of what's happening. Yes, the army has input into certain civilian institutions, but those are related to the armed forces or to things that affect the armed forces or the nation's borders. As a whole, Pakistan's armed forces are busy fighting terrorism, and they're trying to restore order to the country. Economics isn't their business. Manufacturing is not their business. Commerce isn't their business. Governance is not their business. Again, the army had opportunity to overthrow the government. They didn't do it. That was clean. You could have done it right then and there and said new elections. The chief showed us that, look, I'm not interested in running the country. I'm interested in cleaning it up. That means taking out the terrorists, the jihadis, the anti-state elements, the insurgents fighting against us, because that is the long term for Pakistan. What happens here and what happens here, 5 years the next government comes back and they can start over. My job as Chief of Army Staff is to make sure that Pakistan is safe and secure for decades onwards, not just for the next couple of years.
So as we are on the training part, fighting a terrorist part, with the recent or in the last few years that we have seen, the fight against Mujahideen and the recent cleanup operation in Karachi, be it in the Mangopi area or be in the 90 area, these are, let's say, monsters that are there eating Pakistan from inside. But when we go back, we see the same origin by the army in the 80s. So why create monsters if you have to clean them out later on?
Yeah, see, here's where my problem is. I've always said that, look, if you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat history. And Pakistan has done that every 10 years.
Easily.
Every time that we've seen a monster created and thought, okay, this is good for us, within 10 years that monster turns against us. And we have to clean up that monster. And it ends up being bloody, it ends up being destructive for the nation, it hurts the fabric of the country, people take sides. The problem is that this is something you can't really stop. Because if you look at any other country in the world, they have a history of doing the same thing. The CIA did it with the Mujahideen, they turned into Al-Qaeda, they turned into the Taliban. The Mossad did it with Hamas to stand up against the PLO. They turned against them, and is now their biggest rival in the Gaza Strip. You look at Nicaragua, you look anywhere in the world, and you will find that every intelligence agency in the world has created these monsters. And they seem like a great thing for that point in time. But when it gets out of control, you can't stop it. For example, the big story that we hear nowadays, well, two big stories. One, that the CIA created ISIS.
Exactly.
Two, that they're now creating a rebel group in Syria. Let's take them both separately. The CIA created ISIS. Understanding that all of them came out of the CIA prisons that were created for the war on terror. I kind of understand that, understanding that most of the TTP fighters came out of Guantanamo Bay.
Easily.
All the commanders came from there. So I can understand that being a reality. Not saying it is, but I can see it being a reality. This monster has now turned and is now a threat to every U.S. asset in the Middle East. Now, like geniuses again, you are spending $500 million to stand up a rebel force in Syria to fight Assad's government. Your rebel force tomorrow could turn into a problem for everybody else in the region. Because you don't know who's coming in. You don't know who the commanders are going to be. To kill one and take over is not that difficult. And you're going to spend all this money giving them weapons and training and understanding and intelligence and bringing them up to a level of a paramilitary force, just like you do with Mujahideen. And 5 years down the road, they could turn on you. What do you do then? Do you come back and bomb them again?
History repeating.
It's history repeating itself. And the problem I've always had is that any good student of history will go, look, you did this here, look what happened. You did this here, look what happened. You did this here, look what happened. And you're doing it again. Do you think you're going to get a different result? Look at Libya. You remove Gaddafi. Libya's in shambles. Egypt's bombing Libya now to keep the insurgents out of power. ISIS is there. Iraq is ISIS's base. You're now going into Syria. You're going to overthrow a stable government there, potentially creating problems for Jordan, for Israel, for Lebanon, for Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, no matter how much they may feel they're out of the loop. Why do you keep creating the monsters? When we look at Pakistan, poor Pakistan, MQM has eaten Pakistan. No matter how much people want to say that they're a good force. There is a difference between a Muhajir and an MQM supporter. I'm sorry, that's true. Just because you are an Urdu-speaking person does not make you an MQM supporter. What MQM has done to this city, it's exactly what the U.S. does when they invade a country. They invade, they blow everything up, and then they come back and they start rebuilding things. Let me build this road for you. Let me plant trees for you. Let me build a hospital. Let me build a school. Let me build this. Let me build this. And that's what we've seen MQM do. They've won hearts and minds. So now when anyone targets them, those hearts and minds are with MQM. No one wants to listen when you say that Altaf Hussain went to India and said Pakistan's creation was the biggest mistake in the world. No one wants to listen when you talk about the letter he wrote to Tony Blair in 2001 saying that the ISI should be disbanded and will be your agents. As a political party of Pakistan, you offered yourself to a foreign government to be their intelligence assets. How can you trust this person? This is a monster that needs to be cleaned up. And how we're going to clean it up, I have no idea. Because they do have hearts and minds. It's just like when you look at the frontier. The TTP there has hearts and minds. They've spent money, they've given people things, they've made sure they married into the cultures. Uprooting them from there is not just firing bullets, it's a change of ideology, it's a change of mindset. It's giving a lot of things to the people of the FATA region that the government of Pakistan has never been willing to give. This is such a multi-pronged strategy that it's not just the Rangers and the Army that can achieve this. And then we have to see if the political government can take a military victory and turn it into a political win as well. So my fear is, yes, we've created the monster, yes, we'll eliminate the monster, but what are you going to do after the monster is gone? How do you fill that vacuum? And if you don't fill it, that monster is going to come back 10 times stronger.
Even in the 90s, when this monster was weakened, it was against the military government, under which they not even joined the provincial and the national, but they enjoyed it until the, let's say, end of 2013. They were part of the setup, both military and the civil.
Yeah, but look, again, when it's understood that you're the strongest political force in Karachi, and no matter how much we want to say that's not true, it is true. The MQM is the strongest political force in the city of Karachi. They have the most seats, they have the most power. The question is always a matter of delivery. During Musharraf's government, they delivered above and beyond what anyone expected. And I put a lot of that on Mustafa Kamal. He worked tirelessly to deliver for this city. Great. What have you done since? Since you've lost the mayor of the city, what have you done for Karachi since? Target killing? Extortion? Resign from the government? Join the government? Resign from the government? Join the government? Resign from the government? Join the government? It's all gamesmanship. There has to be a concerted effort to help people understand that while you may be affiliated with this political party is not affiliated with you. They left the government and then joined the government in a matter of 24 hours. The easiest way I can do it, how many times has Altaf Hussain resigned in the last 6 months?
Heartless.
To take it back within 12 hours. That has been the MQM governance policy. We quit, we come back. And you always get something when you come back. The people get nothing, you get something. This needs to be made clear to people that while you may think they're standing up for you, they've never done anything for you. We've never seen the MQM resign over fuel prices. We've never seen the MQM resign over electricity shortage. We've never seen the MQM resign over law and order. These are the things that affect people in Karachi. There's been no resignations there. Target the MQM and resignations are surveyed. Now, at some point you have to learn that somebody is actually working for you and somebody is actually working for themselves. This is a party that works for themselves. If that's a leadership problem, or if that's a party problem, it's something that needs to be figured out within the MQM camp. I'm sure there are some great people within the party that can lead the party, but so far what we've seen from MQM is that you're more interested in you than you are in the people of Karachi.
And going back towards your books, you said there will be more civil side to this.
Yeah.
In this and the next book, I think,
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
So will we see these realities also tackled within the narrative?
Yeah. You have to understand that to tell the story of Pakistan, you have to talk about what happens after the army. And what we saw is everything that happens to us as civilians comes from someplace else. It's not originated here. So if we talk about the TTP, it comes from a foreign influence from the Soviet invasion. That's where that movement started from, turned into the Taliban, then Al-Qaeda got involved, and then we had this violent TTP. If we look at MQM and their militant side, that's also somebody else's agenda for Pakistan. If you look at Balochistan and the problems there, that's someone else's agenda for Pakistan. If you look at the jihadi movement in Punjab, that's also someone else's agenda. If you look at the Shia-Sunni conflict, it's also someone else's agenda. What we're trying to do with this series is to paint the picture of this country in reality. I'm saying, a guy wrote a review the other day saying, that this book isn't fiction, because it's what happens in Pakistan. This is what happens in Pakistan. And the intent behind writing the Agency Rules story is to tell the story of this country so that people understand what Pakistan goes through every day. We're not what they tell you on the news. And so far we've only told the military side of it, what happened after the Soviets left. What you'll see in the next two books is you'll now start seeing the civilian side of it. How are people affected by the gangs? How are people affected by the drugs? What is this Kalashnikov culture that we have here in Pakistan? What's happened to the fabric of being a Pakistani since the Soviet invasion ended? And what kind of forces do we see coming into power now? So the intent behind taking the story in the manner it's been taken is that we wanted to show you what the foundation was, because that came from a military fight. And then it's spread out into civil society. And how it's affected civil society is what you'll see in book 2 and book 3. There's nothing that happens in Pakistan that doesn't connect back to something else. And you just have, I always tell people you need to stop looking at things from a Karachiite's point of view or from a Pakistani point of view and look at it from an outsider's point of view. Things make a lot more sense then. But when you're looking at it from, I'm a Karachiite, and you're looking at Karachi's problems, and you're going, well, it's so-and-so's fault, it's so-and-so's fault. No. Look farther back. There's a longer tale to this story, and you need to see it. So the intent behind the books is to tell this story.
So while we are talking about it is his fault or that fault, what about the Soviets? Because they were the ones who rolled out all these problems for Pakistan.
Well, see, I would actually go a different way on that. I think the Soviets exposed all the problems in Pakistan. We knew from the day of creation that Pakistan had a problem between the secularists and the Islamists. And the Soviet invasion brought that to a head.
The communists and the mullahs.
The mullahs, right? We actually had, what they wanted was the jihad. And it opened up a lot of funding opportunities for them. It let them set up madrasas that we didn't have before. We saw war colleges be set up, and those things continue to exist today. How they're used is a completely different story. They're not being sent to foreign countries to fight anymore. Now they're fighting within Pakistan. They're killing Pakistanis. So I would say that the Soviet invasion and withdrawal exposed a lot of things about Pakistan that Pakistan didn't want to believe existed. And what we've done is, for the past 30 years now, tried to fight those things that we know exist inside of us but don't know how to beat. I think we'll get there at some point, but I think we've got a lot more blood to spill before we get to the point where we understand what the mistakes are and how to fix them.
So in summary, what should we be expecting from this book and the next one that you're planning to bring out in the summer?
Okay. Scorched Earth for me is probably one of the most important books in the series, because this is where we expand the entire picture. And there are going to be a lot of confusing parts to this story that won't make sense until you get to the end of it. Because just like any story in Pakistan, we never know where it connects until it's all said and done. And then we go back and go, oh, I see. I understand now. It's what you're going to see with Scorched Earth. Is there's going to be piece and piece and piece and piece and piece, and you're going to have to either figure out how to put the pieces together and understand how the story works, or you're going to end the book and go, scratch your head, go, I don't understand. And that's the intent behind this book. If you look at the first book, a lot of people came back to me and said, you didn't tell one complete story. You told like pieces of stories. And unlike other spy thrillers where it's one simple story, one narrative, there were a lot of narratives mixed in, and you had to figure it out. That's the intent behind the story, because that's what Pakistan is. There are so many voices that talk in this country that if you were to spend 6 months in Pakistan, you'd leave here more confused than you got here. The point of having so many narratives mixed in the story is to let you try and deduct what's the right narrative, what's the wrong one. Kamal's there as a guide for you. His conscience will guide you one way or another, but he's not the only voice you listen to. I mean, you saw in the first book that terrorists are real people. They actually have families, they have needs, they have requirements, which is something the media will never tell you. You saw Kamal, who actually got beat up. As a hero, got beat up and had to heal, which you don't see in Hollywood movies. The intent of this whole series is to let you see what it's like to live and breathe as a Pakistani. So that down the line, if someone says, this is Pakistan, you go, no. This is what Pakistan is. This is what they struggle with. This is the problem. These are the problems they have. I want I want the reader to be able to understand, whether they're in this country or outside of this country, what it means to be Pakistani and why we struggle so hard for this country. It'd be easy for us to throw up our hands and say, you know what, we just can't do it anymore. Let the Taliban have Pakistan and we'll live under their rule, like they did in Afghanistan. Or let the military take over the country and let them run the country. Because, the military knows how to run the stick. The fight that goes on in this country is because we all have a different vision for what Pakistan should be. And the next two books will take you through that vision. It'll let you experience it from the suicide bomber, to to the politician, to the military man, to the civilian on the street, to the guy who's selling fruit, to the guy in the bakery, to the kid in school. You'll see all of these narratives start to mesh into one. And you'll start to understand the Pakistan that we live in. And what I hope that the reader comes away with when they're done reading The Scorched Earth is they understand how screwed up this country is. And that at the end of the day, we're just like everybody else. We're fighting for our own existence. Whether you're an American, a Brit, a Frenchman, a German, an Indian, a Pakistani, a Singaporean, every day is about surviving, and that's what we're about here. Yes, you don't have the same problems we have, but you have semblances of the same problems. They're just not as big as what we deal with here. And you'll understand how the problems were created. Not everything is the military's fault. Not everything is a politician's fault. Some of it comes in from outside. Some of it's our own creation. So the intent behind Scorched Earth and the next book is to let you see things from an unadulterated, unbiased point of view, so you can understand the Pakistan that we strive to be.
All right, thank you, Khalid, for the interview.
Thank you,
And
Wasio.
we are looking forward to the books.
Yeah.
And any last message for the listeners and readers?
Go out and buy the book.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.